Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to BowTieSecurityGuy After Dark. With me today is Sandor Slijderink. Did I get that right?
Yeah. It's never
Awesome.
said the same way twice.
No, I look, I've got a German last name and I feel your pain. I've had wet stain, wet stein, wet stone, Wetstein. They just kind of make it up as they go. So I've wanted to have you on for quite a long time. You were one of the first people when I got like laid off who became what I consider a battle buddy. And I try to tell people who are going through a layoff is that you need a battle buddy or somebody you can kind of kvetch with and you can kind of share your struggles with because it's hard, right? It's a hard situation. You've been dealing with getting laid off for quite a while. I don't necessarily want to, dive into that too deep, but I definitely do want to talk about it later. But how did you initially kind of even get into technology and into cybersecurity? Like, let's talk a little bit about your career and kind of how you got to where you are.
Wow. So I got started, like most people back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. War games, intrigued our mind. Um, and then my dad was part of a bulletin board service, bulletin board system, BBSs. And this is the predecessor to social media.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is what social media is today, is what BBS was back in the day. And there's no real difference. We have emotes now, and we have pictures and GIFs and videos and, stuff
I
like
will
that we can
argue,
do.
I will argue that there is a really big difference. When you and I had bulletin boards, there was a communication back and forth with random other kids and other hackers and things, but there wasn't an algorithm designed to manipulate and control the way you interact with it that actively changes and adapts to your style to keep you programmatically engaged. So you could easily disconnect. Like back in the bulletin board days,
Absolutely.
I never felt the pull of bulletin boards, right? It wasn't like I needed to keep scrolling to see stuff because it was all text-based. So it was contextual and ASCII, images and stuff like that. But I agree with you in the sense that it was just a basic, simple communication. Microsoft Internet Relay Chat was really big. Remember that? That was
It's
like
still
the
pretty.
that was the upgrade to Merc, or was the upgrade to bulletin boards was Merc.
Yeah, IRC was great as well. Some other things that got in. The IRC was kind of its own little project on the side, a little different than a BBS. Um, and then the other thing that I've been exploring over the last several years is actually SSH chat. You can actually build your own chat room. And you can Google this, or I recommend DuckDuckGo, but you can do a search engine, search for an SSH chat room, chat platform, and you can start your own SSH. And literally, it's almost the identical of what you do to get onto LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you socially engage with others. Um, but you use Putty to log in instead of a browser. So
Like,
it's,
that is a special kind of nerd having to use Putty to log into chat.
it is a special kind of nerd, I have to admit.
I love it.
And yeah, hopefully your audience is understanding what an SSH server is and at least has some
I
idea of
mean,
what
if they're
SSH
not, they
does.
can Google it, right? Like we don't like this. This is never really something where we get super technical. I think people can kind of get the gist of what people are talking about because we don't really dive deep into things. So you started early on in kind of message boards and BBC. Were
Right.
you like an early hacker at that time, or were
No,
you
I've
just
always
kind
been
of
a
dabbling?
defender. So where I was going
Mhm.
in on that was um, I had found a copy. A friend of mine down the street where I live, he had a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook. So I looked at the anarchist cookbook, and instead of looking at like how to make tennis match bombs and doing all the stuff that kids were doing to blow up their hands and fingers and you know black cat fireworks everywhere, I was looking to see how they built the black boxes. And this is like the days of like the folks like Kevin Mitnick and them that were using uh, round robin style dialing systems from AT&T, MCI, Sprint, etc. Um, and looking to see how they're attacking these telephony systems, and especially dealing with the platform of choice for my father's, the BBS my father was on, and then I became part of the BBS that all the kids went to of the parents that were hanging out with my dad. So I asked if I could be temporarily a co-sysop and make some tweaks. I think I could make some improvements and lower your phone bill. And they said, yeah, sure, go for it. Have at it. If you can do so, we'll give you free access for life. I'm like, all right, cool. So off I went and I made some dove into major BBS software. Looked at the configurations, mostly port and routing kind of information, and where things went. And sure enough, and back then this was huge, but we had about 800 to 1,000 users, and I saved them upwards of over $400 a month on phone bills for the BBS, which doesn't sound like a huge sum today, but back then
Yeah.
that was the equivalent of saving us $4,000 a month on your phone bill. Okay,
Yeah,
so you're
I
looking
mean,
at
it was huge. So you just kind of fell into it, basically. I feel like all of us have the similar origin story of like I just like tinkering with stuff, and then somehow I got to a point where someone paid me to tinker with stuff, um, and then I turned it into a career. What's the advice you give to kids now who are trying to enter a field that is being degraded with, basically a lot of the AI tooling is going to be targeting entry level jobs, right? Like I don't even know what I would necessarily tell somebody to kind of get that competitive edge.
right.
Um, I mean, with the exception of networking, but what other advice do you have, for somebody who's wanting to kind of fall into this type of career or actively kind of propel themselves into technology? And how can they get that experience, or how can they get any sort of visibility in a world that's kind of
Right.
really made it
So
difficult?
my first experience after high school was working for a company called Electronic Theater Control.
Mhm.
And I worked on a program, a platform that was developed called What You See is What You Get. It got sold and bought and sold numerous times since then. But ultimately, what ETC did with that was they stored lighting console configurations on a remote server. Now, back in the 90s, this was massive. This is major. Um, so for us, a lighting designer would take anywhere from 6 to 8 hours to program a board correctly, along with guiding the folks to focus the lights in the right spot and everything else. This was pure analog days. So connecting to a dial-up, not even a DSL connection, but a straight up dial-up connection, a telephone line, into another server, and then downloading that and being able to set it within about 15 to 20 minutes was a huge differentiator. Now, for me, and the reason why I mention this, for me, it's start with one aspect. You don't need to know all GRC. You don't need to know all of networking. You don't need to know all of systems administration. You don't need to know all of the security controls. You want to start off knowing the foundational basics, the concepts. And the reason why you want to understand on the foundational concepts is that if something goes awry, you know at a foundational level how to work around it and how to make it work. If all you know is how to click and point and time and move around on a GUI, you're not doing yourself any favors, or your company. And that'll set you apart, because when it comes time to do something, okay, when we get to that 5% of our time in a SOC, or in a knock, or wherever, okay, where we have to respond, our ability to understand the basics and how to reroute things, how to change things, how to see patterns is going to be give us an astronomical advantage. At that point in time, it doesn't matter that you have passed your CISSP exam and are waiting for the certificate to come in the mail in 6 years. Okay, while you pay your,
Right.
it doesn't matter. But if you can go through there and go, wait a minute, this is a DOS system. Well, this is how you
Yep.
make a program in DOS. Let's make that happen. Or if you go in and go, okay, this is AdTran. I can go into the CLI just like into a Cisco box, and I can apply and pull out the routes, the show run config. What's your running configuration? 90% of your network administrators and engineers that I have run into specifically that have their CCNA in pocket don't know how, or do not remember how, to go into the command line interface, a CLI, and get to that point where you can do a show run config.
Yeah, I've even
That's
had
the
people tell
difference.
me actively not to use command, right? They're like, oh no, you like when I was the new guy working in networking, I'm like, hey, can't I just do this via the CLI? Like, and they're like, no, 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 you got to do it all through the GUI. And I was like, really? Like, it's super clunky. Like, anyone who's used like any sort of Cisco products, like, it's real clunky to do stuff through the GUI.
It it
Um,
absolutely is.
yeah,
And the difference is the timing. When you go through the GUI, it's going to take you 15 to 20 minutes to
yeah,
program a complete route, okay, to add a VLAN. In the CLI, it is one string. You enter the VLAN, give it a number, give it an IP address, give it a gateway, a subnet mask, hit enter, hit save running config, bam, you're set.
yeah, and in
Okay,
seconds, like, and
right.
that's the thing. Like, I think you only learn those things by tinkering, by playing, and I feel like that a lot of the people don't like ChatGPT as much as I love AI and stuff because I do I truly love AI. I love the way that it helps me as a neurodivergent person like reframe my thoughts into something somebody can understand.
Right.
And there's so many benefits to it and there's a lot of amazing things. So I'm not anti-AI. What I'm seeing a big trend of is the dependency on the AI as the only way to answer questions. I've busted now multiple people interviewing using AI, and I've seen countless people depending on the technology. I'm all for like, I try to tell people like, look, I don't know everything, but I know how to Google really well. Um, and but the Googling, getting the answer, and then going, okay, I know how to do this. This makes sense to me because XYZ, and being able to put those things together, I think is a skill that's dying.
Well,
And I
if
feel
you
like we're
think
not
about,
seeing it as much.
you think AI today is a lot like the remote control when it first came out. We used to go to the TV and turn that knob, the big plunk, plunk, plunk upper knob, and then the knob below that went when you went to change, channels over 12 or whatever it was. Um, UHF and VHF, I believe, were the frequencies that they called. Uh, Today, it's the same way. Now, no one wants to go up to the TV and change it. In fact, if you were to power off a TV and ask 10 people how to power off a TV, at least nine could only do it with the remote or with the talking part of the remote. None
One
of
of
them
one
could
of
find out and figure out that there's a button on the back
there's a
where you can
button. Yeah, yeah.
actually turn it off. And it's disguised because no one ever uses them anymore. So they made them pretty much virtually hidden and almost impossible to find because, well, only the person who wants to find them is going to find them.
I've got two funny stories about that. So the first one is I was working ABC executive support. I get a phone call. It's like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And a New York executive was just beyond pissed because their laptop wasn't on. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, let's just hit the power button. Like, and 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 they go, I've never had to turn this laptop on in my entire life. I have no idea how to do it. I'm not planning on learning. Send someone now. And I'm like, look, here's the deal. It's gonna take me 20 minutes to get somebody to you, or you and I, we can do this together. We can kind of join forces here. And I can teach you how to turn it on yourself. And they fought me on doing that, and then they finally relented and they were like, okay, fine, just tell me how to do it. And I was like, okay, like here's where the button is. And then they hit it and they're like, oh, all right, well that was easy, thanks. And but it's something, I think you're totally right. It's like a lot of people wouldn't even know how to turn the TV on. Like my kids are a little more technical than most kids because like they work on a lot
As
of
are mine.
stuff with me. But even then, there's stuff that I don't cover that I probably think of as common sense. I'm just like, why wouldn't you know that? And then my other story that was pretty great is somebody called just beyond upset when I worked for Dell, and they're, screaming and yelling at me because their computer won't turn on, et cetera, et cetera. And finally I'm like, hey, this may sound weird, but like, is the power on? And he's like, I'm on the phone, aren't I? And I'm like, well, is it a corded phone? Because like telephony service works without you don't necessarily need the electricity. It's powered by the phone. And they go, click, and they hung up because they realized there was no power in the building. It's stuff like that I think that basic kind of problem solving ability is what we're losing with ChatGPT, is because people go to the most complex thing. When I ask people during an interview, like, all right, you can't get to a server, you're trying to connect to it because you got an alert. And what do you do? Like, what's the first thing you
Right.
do? And like, they go for like this most incredibly complex thing. And I'm like, is it on? Like, you know, they've explained 20 steps that they would do to check network firewall ports and identify whether or not it's being blocked, and they would check all of these things. I'm like, is it on? Like, I think a lot of that is going away. But how, as a younger person, like somebody who may be listening to this, like, how do you just build that stuff at home now? Or, it's
Yeah.
rough.
So I always try to present, and I always teach my kids this too. And regardless of whether it's technology, what they're getting into, or struggling with math or science, or
Sure.
trying to find something, whatever the case may be, I say start with the simple thing. And I always say keep it stupid simple.
Yep.
Okay. And I say it in that order because I don't want them to feel like I'm calling them stupid. So
Yeah.
keep it stupid simple. So start with what are the cheapest, easiest, quickest things that you can check right there. So when you're looking at a box, whether it's a PoE switch and you can see that, oh, wait, there's only supposed to be 2 items that don't have PoE, but I've got 3 items that don't have PoE. What's that third item, right? So now you can troubleshoot. Quickest way to find things. Is it plugged in? I can't tell you how
Yep.
many times I've gone to someone go, yeah, my computer, crapped out. It doesn't work anymore. And I go, oh, well, it helped if it's plugged all the way in, and I turn it back on. And now they owe me $150 for a service call because I went to their house to plug in their computer.
Yep.
Um,
I felt like such a monster charging
right.
people for that.
And I did it first too, and I felt bad, especially for the older generation when
Yep.
when I did those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, I also looked at it and go, well, how else are people going to learn?
No, I
People
mean,
aren't going to learn
I still
if
gotta
it gets
eat.
handed to them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if it stings a little bit, okay, like when I was a kid, I did something bad, I got a spanking, and I'm
Yeah.
proud and glad I got spanked every single time I did. No, I didn't enjoy it. But thinking back about it, I spray painted the inside of a car. I got spanked for that with the belt. Okay. I never painted the inside of a car again, right? It's got to sting a little bit. So when it stings a little bit, they kind of go, okay, you know what? I'm going to check the dummy things first before just calling, Geek Squad or whoever
Yeah.
to come out here and charge me $200 just to see if find out that I didn't plug my computer in all the
No, and I'm right there with you too. I felt bad about it, but I also, I had to eat, so I didn't feel that bad. It's like, well, it's unfortunate. Next time, here's some things you can check. And I had like a little cheat sheet, like, hey, here's some stuff that I check right away. This is what you should do next time. And I think that's the right approach to things. So, I mean, you kind of got the gig in networking kind of early on for a telephone company. And then how were you able to pivot that into like your cyber roles and things of that nature? I mean, because that's the big thing. Like,
Well, I've always been focused on information security, and I still call it and still consider it today information security, not cybersecurity. I feel
yeah.
cyber and cybersecurity is just a buzzword to make people feel good or you somewhat understand. And then people are arguing about definitions of, oh, the chief cybersecurity officer versus what's a CISO's role. And, we can go
Right,
back
right.
and forth for days on that. But for me, I'm like my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It's got to be peanut butter and grape jelly. Okay. Anything else is no longer a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to me. Uh, so with that same understanding is um I lost my train of thought there for a second. What was the question?
That was like, what is your banking account number and your routing number? No, it was the question was related to kind of how you made the pivot into cyber
Oh,
and
yes,
how
yeah.
you kind of got into that.
Okay, that's right. So going in with information security and peers, so I went in, I got myself a bachelor's degree at Coleman University in computer information systems. And I've always been focused on the security of the technology, not just making the technology work. I did a lot of work in IT. So I started off with network engineering, got into systems administration, did a little bit of programming coding and back in the early days, primarily in DOS, Turbo Pascal, Basic A, C, C++, etc. Um, it's always been at the forefront when I do things. Not necessarily, not always, and I don't always present it in a way like, hey, I'm defending the cyber, the world from, hackers, but more as a financial plus one for their win, right? If I can save a BBS $400 a month, and they're spending, two, three, $4,000 a month trying to keep the system alive and trying to pull, all the membership fees or whatever. I think it was $1 a month kind of a thing, or $3 a month kind of a thing to be a part of it for some of them. Plus any telephone bills if you didn't have a local system to you within like 4 blocks, I think it was, before you got charged long distance fees. Uh, so it's just always stayed with me. So when I went into the Navy, I did the same thing. I was working on Nalcomas and working on systems and go, if we made this change, we could improve that and make this more safe, more secure, and more financially feasible. We waste less money, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and I just kind of kept going with those kinds of wins. Wound up working with the Department of Transportation with a traffic management center, basically a 911 dispatch center attached to Highway Patrol, and built. We started. That was one of the first times I really got involved in something that resembles what we call CUI today. It was law enforcement sensitive. So basically, we had multi layers of LAN. Sorry, first fiber channel over Ethernet, took a load balancer, multi NICs, the whole 9 yards, and really created a neat system to where only systems that needed to access criminal information, current investigation, law enforcement sensitive stuff could access that. And then from there, worked on a few more 911 dispatch centers out in Texas, worked for some hospitals, both out in Texas, and then Nebraska, did helped with Yale New Haven out in New York, and yeah, just kind of stayed with it. The best thing I can recommend is that you stay on top of what's what, um, especially in anything that catches your interest.
Yeah.
And
Do you feel like your degree gave you any sort of competitive edge? I feel like it may in some cases, but I think the way technology is going, I think it's more relationship based than anything now. It's kind of who you know,
it
unfortunately.
is, but let's say you've got two friends competing for the same job. Okay.
Yeah.
Both friends know the hiring manager, both have the same amount of experience. One comes with a degree, associate's, bachelor's. The other one, only has a couple of certifications, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
When you're going to college, you're applying yourself and you're committing yourself. Okay. And when you follow through with that commitment, that says a lot to a hiring manager, whether they see it consciously or not. They're seeing here's someone who started something, followed all the way through to the end, and made an effort to complete it and see it from beginning to end. Certifications are definitely more valuable in this industry from a knowledge perspective, okay? A pure technical knowledge perspective. But it doesn't give someone or a hiring manager the perspective of, are you going to follow through? Are you going to stick to your commitments? Are you going to be loyal to us? If I start school and 5 weeks later I drop out, I don't get anything. If
No,
I start a
I
certification course, if I start a
yeah,
certification course and after 5 weeks I attain the certification and I'm done, I look like I've completed something.
sure.
Okay.
But in a business that we now have, which is loyalty is becoming basically non-existent, right? I've
Oh,
had I've
absolutely.
had multiple mentees who've been laid off, 3 to 5 times in the last year or two. Um, how can we hold why should we as the employee be held to that standard of whether or not we have commitment? I just I find that a really hard
It's
pill to
doing
swallow lately.
It is. But here's the thing. If you're going to do something, you got to put it all in. If you
Yeah,
don't give it all, okay, and you get laid off, did you get laid off because you didn't put your all in?
yeah.
Did programs fail because everyone around you didn't put their all in? Right? They didn't go all in. They were like kind of
I
half-assing it
wish
in
that
there.
was the case. Every
Right? Well, I mean, I mean,
everyone
if you
I've
think
talked
about
to,
it, I go in, the last sock I managed. There were folks that came in, even in the apprenticeship. Oh, we've got nothing to do. I'm upset. And then the same time, the next day, same person. Oh man, there's just too much to do. I'm upset. So I'm like, okay, what's your sweet spot, and how can I make it so that you've got just enough to do, but not so much that you're overwhelmed, but
Yeah,
enough for you to not feel like you're bored, because then you're going to be upset, or you're going to be upset that I gave you too much work, right? And we have this mentality coming through right now, and I think a lot of it is, as a Gen Xer, my mind is like, I hit the pavement and I went and got a job. I went and did things. I took care of
yeah.
things. I started a lawn mowing company at 8, 9, 10 years old and mowed the lawn. I've got a 10-year-old son. I don't know why it's changed, but I wouldn't put him on a riding lawnmower right now for some reason. I don't, well, my wife more than myself, but
Well, no,
you
I
know,
mean, I wouldn't let my kids go door to door. Like we know more. We've gotten smarter. So let's pivot a little bit, and if you'll
sure.
let me, we've got about 9 minutes or so left. Let's talk about kind of the mentality and the kind of rigor that you need to survive the unemployment market that is now. It was something that I was quite taken aback by how difficult it is not only to get interviews, but how difficult it is to get jobs. What's some things that you've learned? You've been and anyone listening to this, Sandor is absolutely amazing. I would hire this dude in a moment. Just for to do anything, honestly. Like he's one of those people I could set on to any task and do it. So if you need somebody in a leadership role, he's definitely that servant leader that you're looking for. But what is some of the things that you've learned through this process of going through being unemployed and kind of the challenges in the market? And what advice would you give to people who are also struggling?
So my advice is stay focused on specific jobs and searches and apply to them. It's too easy to go through LinkedIn and spend an hour and apply to 100, you know,
Right.
easy apply jobs. And all that's going to do is fill up your inbox with your resume was sent to blah, blah, opened your resume, and then a Dear John letter. Thank you, but unfortunately, Dear John letters, Dear John emails, I guess you can call them now. Focus and really put some time and effort in there. Also, when you're not working, find things that showcase your skills and your abilities. Like one of the things that I've done in this time is during this break, is I built a security operations center framework.
Yeah.
Complete. I brought in, 15, 20 other people to work on this framework. You were one of them.
Yep.
Um, what do we need? What are the basics? Not so much to control how a security operations center is built, but more for a high level intelligence for a technological person to understand what they need versus just buying whatever the vendor is selling them. Oh, you need EDR and SOAR and SIAM, and you need this and that and that and this. Wait a minute, because now they're just going to listen to what this person on the other end of the phone is telling them. And of course, they sound believable. They're now your best friends, and you're going to invite them to your barbecue, even though they just, siphoned a couple $1 million out of your pocket.
Never trust a salesman. Hey, look, I
Right.
was in sales for many years, so I say that with the utmost respect. But if somebody's selling you something, I think you hit the nail on the head. Stay busy and continue to do things online, even and going to like local conferences and kind of meeting with people to showcase your talents and your skills. The advice I give to mentees is like, hey, if you're making a comment on a post, tie it back to yourself and your skill set somehow. Like don't waste a comment, don't waste a post, don't waste just reposting somebody else's stuff. If you don't have thoughts of your own, don't do it because one, the
Right. No,
algorithm's not going to favor you, and two,
absolutely.
you're not
When
putting
you
up a good
repost with
example.
your thoughts, putting your
Yeah.
own thoughts in there. Something else I did is I created something unique, something that most people don't create, is called a leadership doctrine. Okay, I've been in the industry. I've served as a CISO. I've been a CEO. I've been the junior technician, help desk level one, everything. Okay,
Yep.
and creating this leadership doctrine allowed me on the fly to say, if someone says, "Oh, do you have a cover resume? A cover letter for me?" No, not handy right now, but I have my leadership doctrine, or you can give me 5, 10 minutes and I'll write you a specially crafted one. Oftentimes they'll take the leadership doctrine and go, wow, this is impressive. So, fine tune yourself and then apply, like you said, apply your replies, your comments, and your posts, make them all in line with what's on your resume and any other papers that you're giving
Yep.
out. Um, Being a veteran is something that I'm very proud of. So, yeah, I'll speak often on posts that talk about, being on an aircraft carrier because that's where I served at, was on
Oh
aircraft
yeah, eight
carriers.
eight years, brother. You did a lot of time, man. I appreciate that. It's one of those things that I think is overlooked in many cases, like
Right.
and just isn't really thought about. And it's something that you should showcase as your uniqueness. A lot of people keep their profiles very basic, very generic. They've been given direction to, oh no, it just needs to say aspiring cybersecurity or things. It's like, no, just be unique. They read the same crap every single day. Uh, uh,
That
uh, yeah,
if you look at a ticket Okay, same ticket, just different seats. It's all in the same place, same thing. They're not going to remember you after the next ticket. They're not going to remember what seat you were sitting at. They're
No.
not going to remember your face. They're not going to remember everything. So if everything looks the same, just like a ticket, they're not going to remember. Now, if I come over with a ticket that's instead of white with a red tag, all of a sudden it's pink with a yellow tag, okay, and has a little balloon attached to it, they're probably going to remember that ticket a little more and go, hey, there was that
Yep.
guy that had that weird looking ticket. That was pretty cool. They won't remember any of the other tickets, but they'll remember that one. And in the same essence, you've got to make your submission, your application, your resume, your document stand out differently, okay, from the crowd, because
Yep.
everyone is using the same prompts on ChatGPT or whatever
Yeah.
AI platform they're using is craft my resume to match this job description, and then
Yep.
run me through 20 questions over and over and over again of what I would get questions on this person at this company in this position. Okay,
Yep.
and ChatGPT is going to be fairly accurate. What you're going to see and what you've probably seen is, man, three people gave the exact same answers to the same
100%.
questions I just asked,
Yeah, yeah, for
right?
sure. Because they use the same prompts and the same questions in ChatGPT, and it gave very similar answers. I've seen it countless times, but I also don't fault them because
No.
the applying fatigue is real, right?
Oh, it
The
is.
depression is real. The struggle is real, and I feel like when we're interviewing people who've been unemployed for a while, we're expecting them to be these rock stars and we're chasing unicorns. And I keep telling people, stop chasing unicorns. Look for somebody you can invest in. They may not be at their best. Look, they might have been crying 5 minutes before this interview because they don't know how their family is going to eat next week. Like you can't apply the same logic to everyone, especially it's like asking a trauma patient to diagnose themselves while they're bleeding out. And it's just wrong. And I've tried to educate employers on kind of the way you interview and like the asinine questions people ask, like, why did you get laid off? It's like, dude, I have no idea. Like, why would you even ask that? But
Well, and
look, man,
that's the hardest question. Like,
yeah,
why did you leave your last company, or what did you do with your last, why aren't you employed right now?
yeah.
And
Because the
I see
market's
that,
jacked. Because the
right.
market is jacked.
And you can't really go to them and say, well, even if it was my prior boss's fault, and goes, well, they didn't pay me for 2 months, so I had
Yeah,
to
yeah.
resign, and I had a family to feed, and so I had to go on the hunt for something that was going to actually pay me, and that's why I'm here.
No,
Um,
I get it, man. But first
they're
off,
going to
man,
see
I
that
just
as
want,
smearing your former employer, and they're going to be like, well, you're going to smear me then. The
yeah,
second that I'm late on my paycheck, get the heck out of here. Next,
totally.
right?
Well, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. Again, take a look at Sandor's profile. I'll link everybody to it. Thank you again for coming to hang out, man.
Thank you. This is fun. I love it.
Of, of
Um,
course,
so I want to get one of your bow ties.
I'll get you one, buddy. Don't worry about it. See
Sounds
you,
good.
man.
And I'll get you one of my hats.
Nice. I love it.
All right.